every November, the FBI releases its compilation of hate crimes that are reported to law enforcement around the country, and they release the statistics from the previous year. So this November, they released the statistics from 2015, this month. And every year I go through them, and I always see that there's a picture that's not being told in the mainstream media. Um, and this year, the mainstream media narrative was that Muslims are the victims of hate crimes, that hate crimes in the Muslim community have gone up dramatically. They're the victims. The stories don't really mention anybody else. Now, I looked at the hate crime statistics, and in fact, that's not the story at all. In fact, the largest group of religious-based hate crimes victims are Jews, because the statistics are that 53% of all hate crimes are committed against Jews, the ones that are committed based on religion and on the religion of the victim. And not only that, but the number of hate crimes against Jews are more than double the numbers against Muslims. So that could have been the story, and probably should have been the story, not the Muslims. Especially since Muslims claim that they are 9 million people, which I don't think is an accurate figure, but I think the number is more like 2 million Muslims in the country, but we don't really have an accurate count. But since they claim that they're 9 million, their numbers should have been more than double the Jews' numbers, and they aren't. The Jews are the victims. The other thing is that hate crimes have gone up against groups that you never hear about in the media, because they're not the traditional victims in the media. Hate crimes have gone up against Christians, against Catholics, and against Protestants. Hate crimes also have gone up against heterosexuals for being heterosexual and not something else. Hate crimes have gone up against males for being male. So these are groups that are also being attacked in our society, and the stories don't really cover that. The other thing is that I notice every year is the FBI in the hate crime statistics identifies who the perpetrators are, but not really. They give us these amorphous, nebulous categories like white or non-Hispanic white, or something like that. They don't tell you the perpetrators based on religion, and I think that there's a reason for that. I think this is by design, because I think if we looked at hate crimes by the number of Muslims, for example, I think that number would go up, and I think we would see that a lot of the anti-Christian and anti-Jewish hate crimes are perpetrated by more and more Muslims. And not only that, but the hate crime statistics don't include terrorist attacks. So, for example, last year was the San Bernardino attack by 2 Muslims against people for not being Muslim and for being Americans. That's not included in the hate crime statistics as a hate crime. I think it should be. I think it definitely was a hate crime when they murdered all of those people who were their the husband's fellow employees with the state of California. So things like that I found interesting in the hate crime stats numbers. The other thing that I found interesting is that if you look overall, the numbers of hate crimes against any group and all the groups combined are really relatively very minute. And what it tells me is that Americans, above all, are a tolerant people. We're told that we're racist against black people, that we're Islamophobes, and all of this other stuff, which, by the way, a phobia is an unreasonable fear or hatred. And I think there are a lot of reasons when you've got a religion that is doing all the terrorist attacks, or most of them, and attacking people who are not Muslims, and even attacking fellow Muslims who are not extremist enough. But in general, Americans are not any of these things, and these numbers are very minute relative to the population, which is what now, about 320 million people. Well, I think it's political correctness. I think that the FBI and the media have this agenda, especially the media. They've decided who the victims are and who the perpetrators are, and any information and facts that deviate from that story are discounted and not reported because we can't have the public knowing the truth that differs from our agenda, which is what I think is their attitude. I think we saw that during the election campaign with all of the WikiLeaks emails that came out from the Clinton campaign showing that all of these big time mainstream media reporters and so-called journalists were asking the Clinton campaign to shape their stories and basically create their stories. So we know that the media has narratives and they don't really practice much or traffic much in objectivity as much as they claim that they do. Not even close. I do think that people who benefit from it do want to keep the status quo, and I do think these people see a benefit in picking and choosing, fraudulent and fictional narratives of who the victims and the oppressors are, and the perpetrators are. And I do think there's a lot of laziness too, like you said. But I think that also it's not just that there's laziness. I think that there's really an agenda going on, and I think the desire to push this agenda has gotten worse and worse. It seems like to me. We'll never know because there weren't WikiLeaks around during the 2008 election, during the 2004 election, and before that, and so on. So we'll never really know, when this kind of relationship between the media and the left and the media with its narrative started. But I do believe that it started in earnest in the 60s with the counterculture, as many of these people in the counterculture and the left on college campuses became reporters and took over academia in the universities and so on. And I think that they continued to mentor others to continue with this line of thinking, and it's gone on to date. Well, the hate crimes against Jews have gone up pretty much every year. The number has increased, especially every year since 2000, and markedly since the 9/11 attacks. And I think that that's because the Muslims really and their behavior has emboldened anti-Semitism against Jews. And I think, again, if we were to see how many Muslim perpetrators there were, I think we would see that number going up too. And I think a contributing factor to that is also the immigration of Muslims continuously since 9/11 and since the Bush administration took over, when it really started to take off. And I think that we would see a correlation between that and the hate crimes against Jews, against Christians, and so on. So those are the things that I have seen. As far as the Muslims, the numbers of hate crimes against them really are relatively small.
Well, this is really a case of the media performing a journalistic practice which is unethical and really wouldn't have been tolerated back in the day. And to use the vernacular, what they are doing is burying the lead and omitting it entirely. Why has burying the lead, when the lead is truth, why has that become the accepted norm? I don't understand this. I did not understand this when I was taking journalistic courses in college. In fact, my professors made sure that we didn't do this. And yet, we were, now to be fair, I went to a smaller college. So I don't know how the bigger colleges deal with teaching journalism and whatnot. But at least the college I went to, the professors I had, they were better about this. Making sure that when we wrote articles, even if they weren't going to be truly printed, as long as they were just for examination purposes, that we didn't bury leads. And this is sad. It really is. But I think it is a state of old media bias in its purest form. When in doubt, follow the money.
Hey, I will admit I've been very critical of most of the journalists so far, but this is what I like to see. Someone who will speak the news for what the news is, which is what you've done. I have lost all faith in the media, as of most of America has, because of their agendas. And if the media would report all the news, such as these statistics, I think they could gain back some confidence of the American people. But when people out here with me in the public can see right through what's going on, we tend to look down at journalism in the media because there's really not a whole lot of journalism going on anymore. It's all commentary and everybody wanting to be the opposite of Oprah, you know. Oprah is like an uplifting, encouraging, and the news media is more of a dividing and sensationalized, keep people tuned in type of thing. The news is the news, and it should all be reported. It should all be reported fairly, and it should all be reported without the spin. So I have to say thank you, and I also have to say thank you for criticizing the the report itself on leaving things out. Um, Political correctness has began to destroy itself. People are sick of it, and we're not going to tolerate it. You know, it's going to be shown. So why not call things what they are? Do they really think people are so sensitive that they can't handle the truth? I'll give you an example. In 1990, I went blind, and at that point, I was blind. And then it gradually became to where I was no longer blind, I was visually impaired. Oh, it's such a nice, even it takes the sharpness out of the word. However, my vision hasn't improved. I'm still totally blind. And now I went from visually impaired to now I have an exceptionality. Oh, isn't that just so beautiful? However, my vision, I'm still totally blind, but now I don't have to be hurt and wipe my tears away from that horrible word of blind. I mean, really? Really? I think that if I had my way, the first thing I would do is I would export 90% of the media, and then I would have to first export all the political correctness engineers and put them all on their own little island and let them all live happily ever after. But that'll never happen because that's not reality. But it's just sometimes fun to think about. But I do actually respect you for reporting this report and also criticizing this report on the things that should have been included. Thank you. I've really appreciated this. It actually gives me just a little tingle of hope that there are some journalists out there who want to see the truth for the truth, and when they don't feel that a report is being 100% truthful, gone after it. I think this would actually sell news, the truth, no matter what that truth may be. Thank you.
Wow, what a great post. And I think it needs to be out there more. I think a lot of people have a idea that that's all going on, but to be able to have concrete proof from someone who's investigating it and looking it up and getting it out here, I think is great. I think that the typical mainstream media, news channel stations and stuff like that are owned by a very few people. And so as far as getting the real scoop on kind of what's going on, people aren't getting that. And if you go by that only alone, then you're going to be like without any kind of other real knowledge going on out there. And to be able to have you on this listserv here, to be able to tell us, to be able to go look on YouTube and things like that, I think is a great thing and makes people more informed of what's going on. And as far as the Muslims are not a religion. It was designed by and written up by one person who has written up a list of, or booklet or whatever, of what the guidelines are for what their agenda should be, which I think a lot of, I can't remember how long ago it was, but they basically have, back around 9/11 or even before, have set their agenda to come to the U.S. to destroy it, the Christians and the Jews. And people need to, take action and be warriors and, do something about it. And so I'm hoping that through this next term, with new government officials and all of that going in a whole new direction of how they've been going the last 8 years, we'll be able to get this turned around and take our country back and be able to have some sense of safety and security here once again. And I think a lot of it has to do with the last government that has been in, and the people that's been in, and a lot of the stuff that's being uncovered now through the WikiLeaks. So I really enjoyed listening to your post. Thank you.
Yes, the media is always trying to paint a picture with their story and avoid anything that does not further their own story. But it's nice to hear the facts from the FBI. These are some facts that are solid, and thanks for bringing it out.